So Hit Boy got paid about $45,000 for a beat that he made for Rihanna and ended up having to give up at least half of that, if not more, to the person that made the sample that he used, even though that sample was listed as royalty free. That story's been all over the internet. When I heard that story, I'm like, let me look up who this other producer credited on the track is and see if it's somebody I know. Because I felt like there was something missing. There was a part missing to that story. And the reason I feel that way is because this has happened to me before, where I'll put out sample packs and all of my drum kits, all of my one shots, all of my drum loops, all of those are 100% royalty free no matter what. My original compositions are generally not royalty free. I have README files in all of my packs. They explain exactly what the terms are. The most I'm ever asking for is 20%. If you get a placement, if you're just selling beats on BeatStars or to unsigned artists, then cool, do your thing. Don't even contact me. Don't worry about it. But actually, as of last week, I just contacted a lawyer to collect some money from a major label because a producer used one of my non-royalty free samples, got a placement. I wasn't told about it. I had to find out because someone reached out and congratulated me on a track that I didn't know I produced, but I listened to it and all the instrumentation was done by me. It was in one of my packs and it was clearly marked as non-royalty free, and I put all my information in there, so the person could have contacted me, but they didn't. So that's why when I heard about what happened with Hit Boy, it struck me as odd because, I don't know, I've been on both sides of this particular situation. And when I saw the name of the other producer who was credited on the track, I assumed that this is the person that owned the sample that Hit Boy ended up having to negotiate with. So I was like, let me reach out to him. Got some information. He didn't want to be named or anything like that. And there are always several sides to every story, not just one, not just two, maybe three, maybe more. Now, this situation could have been avoided. So if you're watching this and you use any type of samples, any types of loops, don't get scared. Just be prepared. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but hey, if that helps you remember this, let's treat it like a 1990s era public service announcement slogan. All right. So let's see what went down with Hit Boy.
And you know what's so crazy? I never told this story. On Anti, I got paid $45,000 per track that I did. Basically, once the thing comes out, it's a random producer. He basically approached my attorneys and said that I stole his sound. I stole his music, but I got that pack out of the royalty free kit from I traded kits with Don Cannon that literally said in parentheses royalty free, right? And I was just like pressing different things and I made that pattern for Whoop. Basically got into a place where half of that money, that $45,000, I had to give it to him, and I had to give him most of the percentage on the song. I tried to be like, yo, bro, I had no idea. The pack literally said royalty free and it wasn't a loop. So he tells me, you stole from me and da. And I just was like, what? I was like, bro, we could tap in and we can make more music. He like, nah, you stole my sound. I'm like, all right, bro. So I had to give him the $45,000 back. He big dog the situation.
Wow. From what I understand, if you change a sound to be different, so that way it's not the exact same copyright, then the copyright would then change and then it wouldn't be.
However this went down, they was like bulldog.
Do you know who the guy interviewing him is? Because he shouldn't be interviewing people.
You should have just cut that part off.
Well, no, can we address that dumbass shit at the end? If you change a sound and the copyright, shut up, man. If you don't know about some shit, don't talk about it. That shit, because some aspiring producer is gonna watch that and be like, well, the guy with the glasses in the Hit Boy interview said if you change the sound slightly, it's yours. And copyright law, shut up. This is how this shit happens because people like that.
So break, because obviously, Payne, you sell packs, right? Like, yeah, and we see royalty free on it. And I know that's confusing to some people. Obviously, it was confusing to Hit Boy, but break that down, kind of how that happens, and maybe if something else should have happened when Hit Boy used that pack, like what should have happened.
Well, when I watched this clip, I wanted to figure out who the producer was because something seemed off. Because my thing is, all right, if I release a pack and it says royalty free, and I release it and I'm labeling it as royalty free, those labels, the lawyers, they're not going to let me get away with at the last minute saying, no, hold on a second. No, I want to cut. There's a paper trail. If I'm releasing
so for your packs, like you when you sell them, obviously you get compensated for the pack, and then you don't have any expectation on any side of the copyrights on the master or the publishing. Everything is royalty free for real? Like, is that
No, if I release a royalty free pack, yeah, but I very clearly mark that, and I release it through platforms that also clearly mark royalty free. So like Lander samples, for example, royalty free. Anything I release through there has to be royalty free. Anytime I release a drum kit, all those one shots, all the drum loops, royalty free. But there's a README file in the kit. And when you go, so if there's any confusion, right? If any producer gets a placement with, say, Damn That Hurt, Volume 5, they have a drum loop in there that I created. And someone at the label's like, are you sure this is royalty free? Let's go back. Here's the pack. Here's the README file. Oh, well, that's not enough. Cool. Let's go to the source. So you go on Google, go right to my official website, go to any of the websites that are distributing that, and you'll see that it says royalty free. Now, when it comes to a composition, I have very specific terms there. I'm not asking for 50% of a producer's equity if they get a placement with it, but if it's and that's just how I do things. But that's all clearly marked too, and you can trace it back to any of the.
Wait, so when you say when it's a composition versus a loop, like what is
percussion, one shots, that kind of thing. I mean, everyone sets their own terms, right? And that's something that people don't understand, because people will hear these conversations, they'll think, okay, well, a one shot is always royalty free. No, or a drum loop is copyright free. No, it's not. Everything you create, any piece of recorded music you create, you own the copyright to. So you can set the terms. When I walked into this loop making space, it was just kind of the unwritten rule that drum one shots and just one shots in general were royalty free. Drum loops were royalty free. Original compositions like a sample or a melodic loop were not royalty free unless you explicitly stated that they were. So that's just how I adapted to the space when I got into it. I first started with drum packs, so I didn't even have to worry about that. I just made it all royalty free. And then when I started doing compositions, cool. And I'm like, all right, if you get a placement, I just want 20%. People still play and, lie and try to create problems. But the beautiful thing about that is it's documented. I don't play about the documentation. I want to make it as clear as possible. So that's how things work in kind of like the retail space where you're selling these packs publicly. Now, the plot twist here is, as I'm watching the interview, you notice that Hit Boy was saying it said royalty free in parentheses on the pack. And I'm like, but who wrote that there? Because it sounds like you traded that pack with other producers, and so you don't know what the source is. I would be terrified if I got a placement with Rihanna and I used a loop, and the person I got the loop from was just like, yeah, I think it's royalty free. I'd be terrified. I'd be like, no, I got it. Where did you get this from? I need to trace it back to the origin. And so I searched up. I'm like, what producer would do this? Because at the end, he's like, Hit Boy said, well, we could have continued working. We could have done all this stuff. And he made it seem like the producer was just, there are more than two sides to every story. And so when I saw that part, I'm like, a lot of people are going to watch this and think that producer really fumbled. He should have, now he just screwed himself in the industry. No one's going to want to work with him. I'm like, let me just check to see who this producer is, because maybe I know him. And I do. I'm not going to say his name. I asked him if he wanted to come on this episode or just a separate episode to talk about this. He said, no, thank you. So I'm going to respect that. But it's public information. And if you look at who he is and what his track record is, he's doing well. He's always done well. There was a time when he co-produced one of the biggest songs of like an entire 2-year period. If I say the name, everyone's going to know, but it was with Metro Boomin, so whatever. And I reached out to him because he sent me samples before, but he's not the type of guy that sells packs. he's the type of person that works directly with people in the industry. And so like he would send Murder Beats packs and he would send me packs. It was never you going online and buying his sounds. It was more of an exclusive thing. So that's why I'm like, someone must have just been getting his sounds and then did some fuck shit, some stupid shit, and put Hit Boy in a bad position. Because it's not Hit Boy's fault. I mean, like he should have checked into it, but somebody can mess things up if they just put all these samples in a pack and then type royalty free like an asshole, even though it's not royalty free. Because I think they just did that.
Or it could have just been an accident. Like it could have.
Yeah.
It could have been any. That's the thing. Like any number of things could have happened. But when it comes down to it, especially when you're working with an artist like Rihanna, you got to dot all your I's, cross all your T's. Like you said, you can't just take somebody's word for it. You know, you got to get to the source before, you know, songs start coming out. You know, because once songs start coming out, now you have no leverage. Because that actually was my first. I was like, damn, he could have kept working with Hit Boy, but now you're telling me it's an established producer that works with you know, other artists, and it kind of all these little things could change the story or how I feel about like my perspective on things. But like you said in the very beginning, there's probably 8 sides to a story, and when you don't have all the facts, there could be like 200 different things that could have happened, and we don't know until you start, you know, piecing the facts together.
Yeah, and I think one takeaway. I guess I'll just say, and because I was DMing with the producer, and without saying his name, I'm just going to tell you what he told me. He said, "Show me all the royalty free packs that I've made. There's never been one." And I'm like, yeah, I knew that. When I found out when I looked up who it was, that's why I reached out. Cause I'm like, there's no way he's putting out royalty free anything. And I said, it sounds to me like somebody stole your packs, relabeled them as royalty free, and then sent them to Hit Boy. He said, quite possible. He said, either way, there was no proving it was royalty free. So that's why it ended how it ended. You got to figure that out before you put out the record, not after. So everything you just said, you know, yeah, you have to figure it out. I mean, these are high stakes. So the other takeaway is that if this had been a sample from, say, a band, this would have been a different outcome. If this had been a sample, like a traditional sample that was released in the 80s by Arista Records, and people do this. I can't stand when producers do this. This is the worst thing ever. When producers or these fake ass sound designers will just chop up a bunch of old songs and put them in a pack and be like, oh, I made these. And then you have people that trade the sound kits. They can't trace the origin back. So then they end up getting a placement and they think that it's a royalty free pack because it was circulating around Reddit or whatever. In reality, it's all copyright infringement. It's all old songs that are owned by somebody else, and they put themselves in this position. But if that had happened, they would have come back and snatched everything from Hit Boy. They would have taken that whole advance. They would have taken 100% of the underlying composition, all the publishing, all the writer share, I think, because that's what happens when you clear the sample. This is why sample clearance is bullshit. You know, like when I produced that Ludacris record, I sampled the 5 seconds of the record, and everything else, drums, piano, guitar, everything else was stuff that I added. And it only plays for the chorus section, the sampled part. They took 100% of everything for that. So, you know, I think this was an awful situation for Hit Boy. But at least it was a sound designer who understands the landscape of sampling. And the whole reason he makes samples is to avoid these kinds of situations to begin with. You know what I'm saying? So even though the outcome wasn't great, it wasn't devastating. It sounds like he kept half the money and likely a portion of the underlying composition. So he still made money off of it. It was just an ugly situation, and whoever mislabeled that thing as royalty free is actually to blame for all of this.